Hi, everybody. Welcome to this launch of the Economics A-Level track changes as part of the wider Teach the Futures curriculum for a changing climate. This is a really exciting launch, with it being the first of the A-Level subjects to be reviewed and following on from our previous work as well on the primary and secondary curriculum. So we're really, really delighted to have you all here today. My name is Amy Padfield, and I'm Senior Project Manager at SOS UK, Students Organising for Sustainability. We're a charity that seeks to transform the education system to deliver sustainability and climate justice through a youth-led approach. And we support the campaign Teach the Future, which is led by secondary and tertiary education students as part of that work as well. We'll be hearing from one of the Teach the Future's young volunteers later, as well as part of this webinar, which is great. Teach the Future believe that climate education should be meaningfully woven through all education phases. Our schools and the education system are, of course, an incredibly important part of creating change and ensuring young people are properly equipped with the tools and knowledge to be able to meet the global challenges we are facing and going to continue to face into the future. Track changes reframes the existing approved subject content rather than rewriting it, which means that teachers can use it now without deviating away from requirements. And this provides us with an effective stopgap measure until we get wider curriculum reform, and of course also offers an excellent tool to influence wider curricular change. Of course, again, is very relevant at the moment with the current curriculum and assessment review taking place. For today's webinar, I'm really, really excited to be able to introduce some fantastic speakers who have been involved in the development of this economics A-level version of Curriculum for a Changing Climate. We'll be hearing from individuals who have been working hard behind the scenes to pull this together, as well as a teacher's perspective on its direct use within schools, and a Teach the Future volunteer who's going to give you their own perspectives as well, as a bit of information on the exciting work currently taking place within Teach the Future. A few mentions on housekeeping. We're recording this webinar today, and we'll be uploading it to YouTube and circulating, so you'll have access to it as well afterwards. There'll be also the opportunity to ask questions. So if you'd like to ask questions, you can use the Q&A function, and we'll try to get as many answered as possible today. Feel free to start putting questions throughout the talks. And if you have a specific speaker as well you'd like to answer, do write their name within that too. That'd be great. And I'm delighted to hand over first to Dr. Elsa Lee, who's going to introduce herself a little bit more, and provide an overview of the journey so far, bringing all of these documents and really exciting work together. Thanks, Elsa.
Thank you for the introduction, Amy. So I'm going to talk about the processes that we have undertaken to complete the review as far as we've got, and then also tell you a little bit about the principles that we use to underpin the project. Next slide, please. So this project began in 2022, and as you already know, it has been spearheaded by Teach the Future and SOS UK. And then we've concluded this primary review. So we did first Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, and there were about 40 collaborators on that part of the project. We had a really big team who worked with us. We did the primary curriculum, and there was another about 20 people who joined the project at that point. And then more recently, we've worked with Jennifer, who's going to be talking in a minute, and a couple of other people. But then Jennifer also has a team of about 10 people working with her on regenerative economics. So I think we're sort of round about nearly 90 people who have been involved in this project on and off. It has been directed and coordinated by Paul Ver, myself, and Alex Catallo. And the reports about this are available on the Teach the Future website and SOS UK website, as well as on ResearchGate. Paul Ver led the writing of that and did a really amazing job. So if we could move to the next slide, please. I just want to tell you a little bit about what impact this report has had very briefly, because I've mentioned this in previous talks, but just quickly. So you can see I've got an image there of a pathway, and I chose that because the word curriculum derives from the Latin word for track or pathway. And I just thought I would highlight that for those of you who haven't come across this before. So there's some ways in which this has been used, and I'm not going to focus on any of them. You can see them there, but I think most recently we've added here to support submissions to the Francis Review of the national curriculum. So lots of really impactful outcomes from this project, which is a sort of consultancy project that we've been working together on. There you go. That's fine. And you can move to the next slide, please. So just to kind of give you a sense of how we went about the project, slide was put together by Paul, and you can see that in the secondary curriculum review, which is the one we did first, which Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, not Key Stage 5, but Key Stage 3 and 4, we had kind of a range of different groups. We had the kind of reference group, the jurisdiction review group, and then the subject specialist teams. And then there was the kind of directing group, which is myself, Paul, and Alex, that I've mentioned previously. So you can sort of, the outcome of that reference group and jurisdiction review group at the start was the guiding principles, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But the jurisdiction review group really deserves a mention because that was people from Scotland and Wales, and I think also Northern Ireland coming together to kind of talk about what curriculum looks like in their context, right? So what does it look like in a different setting, but still within the kind of British Isles, which I think is really interesting. There's lots of differences, and they brought a lot to the table to help us to think about how we're going to go about this. And that report, the work that they did is available in the report that I mentioned earlier, and it's really worth having a look at because it's really fascinating. And then we had this reference group, which is a group of sort of academics and teacher trainers who were there, who've been working in this field for a very long time, who influenced, the decisions that we made and across the as we went, and also the subject content and so on. Then we had subject specialist teams. Those were teachers and teacher trainers in groups of sort of 3 or 4 working together to review specific subjects. This is for secondary school. And then we came out with the kind of curriculum documents that you can find on the website and the executive summary and final report. And then we moved on from there to the primary review. We had to take that slightly differently because primary really works in key stages, as you know. So we did that in Key Stage 1, and then we did it in Key Stage 2. And then we got subject specialists to look at what we were suggesting for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So it was a slightly different approach because, obviously primary is taught in a different way, but the outcome was very similar. So the report looks very similar to the secondary, but it's quite different in the way that we did it, just so that you've got that sense. All right, if you could move to the next slide, please. So I just want to quickly highlight some of these guiding principles because I'm really proud of these. I think they are really wonderful, and they were an outcome of this kind of group of people, including the people in the secondary, in the primary team. So first they came out of the secondary teams, and then we asked the primary team, the reference group from the primary team, to have a look at them and see if they still fitted with what we would see in a primary space. And some things changed when we did that. So we brought on board imagination, for example, because it was really important to kind of, demonstrate the importance of imagination. And we had missed that when we look at it from the point of view of the secondary curriculum, which was quite interesting, I thought. So we've got 10 guiding principles, which we shared with people who were going to, before they started the reviews, so that they're like something to touch base with for each of the reviews that they were suggesting. And we put them into 3 groups. So this first group of guiding principles, guiding principle 1 to 4, really focus on interconnectedness and interdependence largely, or this notion of together and apart, which you may know comes from the work of people like Donna Haraway and Karen Barrett and so on. And you can see that it picks up on, systemic thinking, morals and values, interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and so on. Can we go to the next slide? So the second set of guiding principles are these ones which we've entitled optimistic and solutionary. And I think Paul is not too convinced by that word solutionary, but it actually comes from the work of Zoe Wheel, who talks about, taking in a solutionary approach. And this one starts with the notion of eco-anxiety and putting that accepting that eco-anxiety is real, and that when we teach about climate change, we can actually make that worse if we don't treat it in a way that enables children to feel empowered to act. So we've got eco-anxiety, then we've got a sense of awe and wonder, and then the last one is about capabilities and dispositions for action. So those kind of sets of guiding principles go together. And then the last slide of guiding principles is this one about transformative learning, but it's about kind of both the small changes that we make and the big changes that we make, right? So not just assuming that things have to change in one big bash, but realizing that small changes add up to a big change in the long run. And I think that's really true, both for how we act in terms of environmental behavior, but also in how we work in schools and how things change at a systemic level. We also talk about unforeseen learning, creative and critical thinking, all of those in that last set of guiding principles. Okay, I think there's one more slide, please.
That's actually your last slide,
Oh,
Elsa.
that's fine. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll find the guiding principles helpful, when you're doing your own work in this area. If you use them as a touch point, to consider how you're going to design your curriculum materials, I think that can be really helpful. But thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Elsa. I think it's really great, obviously, to hear more about track changes and the guiding principles. And I wanted to just say as well, when asking questions, that Paul Vere is also on the call and is able to answer some questions as well afterwards. So Elsa and Paul can answer your questions. So next up, we have Jennifer Brandsberg-Engelmann to take us further into the development of the A-level economics work, along with bringing regenerative economics to life and the wider global context as well. Over to you, Jennifer.
Great, thanks. I'm going to share my slides now. Hopefully this works. Great, can you see that?
Yep.
Yep,
Yep.
perfect. Okay,
Lovely.
great. So thanks so much for the invitation, both to work on this project and also to present what we've done today. I'm incredibly excited about this project and also its potentials, not only to shift learning around economics in England, but also across the globe. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the potential tipping points that we see for the work that's being done here. Just a quick word about myself and background. I've been teaching social sciences for more than 26 years, but my main focus has been on teaching economics at the equivalent of A-level for the last 2 years of school. But later in my career, I also took up business management teaching, environmental systems and societies, and have done quite a bit of change-making work, including developing a change-making curriculum. So very much involved in project and place-based learning with students. Back in May 2023, when we first released the GCSE economics syllabus, I actually quit my job as a teacher so that I could work on bringing the regenerative economics work that we had begun there to life in order to shift the way we're teaching economics globally. And so I've been actively engaged in that work since that time. What I'm going to do in this presentation is give a quick overview of why economics needs reform, what it is we're proposing should happen, and then we'll be joined by a teacher of A-level economics, Sonal Patel, who's going to talk about some specific ways that you can include this A-level work into your own teaching right now. So I'll first address the why. If you're on this call and you're interested in this work, you're probably already familiar with the term metacrisis or polycrisis, which is this set of interconnected crises that we're facing around the world today, whether we're talking about climate change, mass migration, pandemics, the risks associated with artificial intelligence and the lack of guide rails for that rapid development, crisis of loneliness and mental health issues, as well as the most recent rise of leaders with authoritarian intentions. There is quite widespread agreement that the way our economies function play a key role in the metacrisis, and that what we're seeing from the way we've designed our economies is that they weaken both social and ecological systems that have led to these events. And unfortunately, our economics courses, rather than mitigating what we're seeing in the world, are actually contributing to those crises. They're contributing to degenerative economies. And what I'd like to do is just quickly explain a couple of the key points about what's wrong with the current way we teach economics. And here I'm implicating not just the A-level syllabus or the GCSE syllabus, but the way economics is taught around the world in secondary schools. It's not a unique phenomenon here. This is common everywhere. One of the big problems that we have with these courses is that they focus mostly on markets. You can see I've drawn that with the largest text on the slide to emphasize that that's where we spend most of our time in these courses. And we draw a systems boundary around markets. And that makes anything that is non-market oriented treated as external or imposing or interfering with markets. So the A-level syllabus, along with other curricula across the world, also talk about the state as an economic actor, but it's treated almost as a kind of alien entity. The state intervenes, it interferes, it imposes. We talk about tax burdens. We have a whole language around the state that kind of treats it as this, undesirable entity in our economic systems. Likewise, our courses do spend some time talking about the social and ecological impacts of our economies, but we use the word externalities to refer to them, again, highlighting the way that we've drawn an artificial systems boundary around market-based activity. And we don't spend much time talking about them. That's why that's drawn in the smaller text. But perhaps even worse, there are two provisioning institutions that we don't talk about at all, and that's household care and domestic work, which is enormously important for human well-being and is completely ignored in our courses, despite the fact that if we put a number on it, a kind of value in monetary terms, it would be equivalent to the largest industries in our countries, and we don't devote any time to it at all in our courses. And likewise, we completely ignore commoning or the commons. This is all of the self-organized management of resources that happens. If we mention commons at all, it usually has the word tragic or tragedy of the commons in front of it. But in actual fact, people around the world, including in most communities of the world, do actively manage resources together, showing that human collaboration is not only possible, but very much desirable outside of the market and state systems. Within markets themselves, we have sets of quite damaging assumptions about both human behavior and business behavior that underpin the models that we use. And these assumptions are necessary to make the models and the math work. And so, for example, we start our courses with the assumption of scarcity, unlimited human needs and wants, that there's not enough. And this promotes a kind of anxiety among people about how to get their share, which kind of perpetuates the entire course. With regard to businesses and the models we use to illustrate market activity, there's an assumption underlying all of those models of profit maximization, which goes on to justify value extraction from all other stakeholders in society. With the models, promote an idea of endless, aimless growth, economic growth. And even though we have sections of our courses that say growth isn't always good and that growth, can bring problems, the attention given to the problems of growth are relatively small compared to the overwhelming impact of these models, which assume that growth is good. And you can see the impact of that in the way that our politicians talk about growth, as though it's kind of the primary concern of markets, of the wider economy and the state. And then finally, we have price as the dominant metric of value, which pushes out any other way of valuing our economic lives. So these are some of the key problems with the way that our economics courses are currently offered. And this really matters because powerful people in our societies have economic degrees. And if they don't themselves have degrees, they have advisors who have economic degrees. So the worldviews, the economic worldviews that we teach in our A-level courses and beyond at universities really shape the behavior of the people who make decisions for us in society. And we really need to change this because we're facing a planetary crisis that demands different ways of organizing and different visions of the future and what's possible. So what are we proposing? Yeah, these are the criticism of the courses, but what's the alternative? Before I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking in detail about each of these syllabi, but I do want to generalize because when I talk about the approaches, I think it's important to recognize that any individual things that you see in the syllabus are part of 5 broad shifts that I'd like to recommend that we make in our economics courses. Number 1, we should widen the systems boundary of the course. Number 2, we should give the economy and economics a purpose beyond profit and growth. Number 3, we should teach the complexity of human behavior and motivation. Number 4, we should replace the reductionist binary linear models that we use in our courses with complex adaptive thinking and complex systems models. And we should, number 5, reduce the time spent on manipulating models and increase experiential learning. So I'm just going to go through each one of these briefly to explain the reasoning behind this as the basis for the course. And I was really glad that Elsa actually reminded us of the principles of the work that's been done with track changes, because I think you can see these principles already in these 5 broad shifts that I've outlined here. So first of all, widening the systems boundary, that's the first recommendation. What we're recommending in the syllabus that we've produced is that we don't only focus or mainly focus on markets, but that we widen the systems boundary right out to include Earth systems, as well as wider society. And you can see here markets are still included in the syllabus that we've produced, but they're not the dominant part of the syllabus. They're one piece of 4 provisioning institutions that are given equal weight in the course. So the state is no longer treated as this alien entity. It's considered, an equal partner along with household, all the unpaid household care and domestic work, which is on equal footing in the syllabus with markets and state, as well as the commons, all this self-managed self-organized management of resources on the part of communities around the world. So you can see already that's quite a shift in terms of the different provisioning institutions that are given attention. But going back to this embedded economy model, the economy then is not seen as a kind of isolated entity with a boundary around it, but is embedded in wider society. And that means we've included elements from other disciplines woven through the entire syllabus. So values are considered, power is addressed throughout the syllabus, history, law, politics, culture, and social norms. These are woven through the entire curriculum in a way that you don't find in your mainstream syllabus. And then finally, both the economy and society are embedded in Earth systems. And what that means is that, again, throughout the course, we spend time talking about our dependence on energy and matter from Earth's systems, and also the impact of our economic activity as we attempt to meet human needs within planetary boundaries. Now, this might seem like a big shift, but the great thing is we already have this embedded economy model. It's already out there. It features in donut economics as one of the primary models. It's not the donut economics model, but it's a different diagram that appears in the book. And this actually gives us an amazing way to organize the course, because we can spend time on each of these provisioning institutions, and then we can also talk about money and finance and international exchanges, all within this social and ecological context. So by moving this to making this one change about moving the systems boundary, we're getting interdisciplinarity. We're getting systems thinking. Students are would be required in this course to learn the basics of ecology, so which is absolutely fundamental as we try to meet human needs within planetary boundaries. We need to understand how nature works. We're actively trying to end the human-nature dualism that is pervasive in our societies and in our economics courses, this separation between humans and nature. And by definition, moving to this embedded economy model also implicitly includes multiple economic schools of thought, including ecological economics and feminist economics and institutional economics. So these are woven right into the course. So that's an incredibly important shift. but I'll just much more quickly go through number 2 through 5. So the second recommendation is about giving the economy and economics a purpose beyond profit and growth. As I mentioned previously, these assumptions around profit maximization and growth are embedded deeply into the economic models that we use. But in fact, the goal of our economy should be human and wider ecological well-being. And that means that we need to move from the approach and the methodologies given in this course towards a focus on goals and understanding how we can shape our economies in order to strengthen social and ecological systems and to build resilience. The third proposal is to teach the complexity of human behavior and motivation. And again, these courses are dominated by the models, which require that we assume utility maximization on individuals, profit maximization of firms, and growth maximization of the wider economy. But in actual fact, we know very well now through research and our understanding of evolutionary theory that human beings are cooperative and caring as well as competitive and status seeking. We're both, we're very complex. And we need to include that complexity in our understanding of human nature and human behavior. And also, it's critical for this futures orientation to rebuild more regenerative economies that reciprocity and care mattered more for a healthy economy than competition. So we need to get away from that scarcity and competitive mindset in order to build more regenerative economies. Recommendation number 4 is to replace the reductionist binary linear models with systems thinking models. And I would assert that if you buy into the recommendations 1 through 3 about widening the systems boundary, about a purpose-led economy, and about more complex human behavior, we cannot, by definition, retain these linear models in the course. It's not possible. They don't make sense anymore if you buy into those first 3 recommendations. And fortunately, we have better models and illustrations to help us deal with the wicked problems that we face and our complex dynamic systems involved with our economies. And that includes things like stock and flow diagrams, causal loops with feedback, agent-based models, etc. So we already have a toolkit of these, and we shouldn't be afraid to ditch the old models and start adopting some new ones that better represent reality. And then finally, the 5th recommendation is to reduce the time spent manipulating models. Whichever models we choose, we should be spending less time sitting at desks, moving lines around, and much more time increasing experiential learning. And I think this is very much in line both with the principles of this work that we've been doing, but also with what I've been hearing people are telling the Francis Review, that kids need to spend a lot more time outside. They need to engage with their communities. They need to engage with ecosystems, both to build affect, to build kind of stronger emotional ties to people and to place and to ecosystems, but also to practice care, because we've kind of lost that muscle of care in our market-dominated economic courses, and we need to get back to centering care in these courses. So those are the 5 broad recommendations. And those underpin what we've recommended then in the syllabus that we've developed. And we've developed 2 of them. You'll see on the Teach the Future website, I've got a screenshot here that there are 2 of them available. The first one at the top, the Economics AS and A-Level Guide, just takes the current syllabus and adds some language to it. So we've not restructured it. We've not changed the formatting of it. All we've done is taken what exists and we've added some things to it just to highlight some potential footholds already in the current national curriculum for some of the ideas that I've just expressed. And you can see that this is just a screenshot of the document. I'm not going to pull up the actual document, but this is just one of the pages. So the black text here is the current syllabus, and the red text there are the additions that have been made. And these could be interesting, for example, for exam boards who might be looking to tweak their economics courses in the run-up to any larger change that happens with the national curriculum. But we've offered as well a more transformed curriculum. So this is one that really rethinks the course from the ground up based on the 5 broad shifts that I've just explained, as well as the principles for the larger track changes work. And here's a screenshot just of one page of that from the Introduction to Economics. You can see the front cover there, the people who were involved with this, including Kate Raworth, the author of Donut Economics, who teaches at Oxford. The contents, I also took a little screenshot because I want you to see how not scary the structure of the course is. It's a massive shift, but when you look at it, you realize it makes a lot of sense, right? So there's an introduction to economics, which basically lays out this embeddedness paradigm that we're trying to shift to. And then after that, students are able to explore households, markets, commons, and state. And the curriculum itself really explores relationships. So it's a very relational curriculum. So again, what Elsa mentioned, this kind of breaking apart and putting together is what we're doing with these different provisioning institutions and how they relate to one another, and as well as power and values and social norms, et cetera, and also wider economic, ecological systems. And then you have money and finance and international exchanges. But in contrast to the current system, this is money and finance and international exchanges with a view towards the goal of strengthening ecological and social systems, which is quite a bit of a different perspective than we have now in our current courses. And I just highlighted just a few of the bullet points from the introduction, so you can see what it means to expand that system's boundary. So for example, you can see here in the middle of that highlighted text, students are exploring the human nature relationship. So we're actively trying to get rid of that human nature dualism that we have. They have to understand the role of energy and matter in economic systems. It's a total blind spot in our current courses, and part of the reason why we just are undermining those systems without realizing what we're doing. Stock and flow systems models, causal loop systems models, the role of ecosystems and biogeochemical cycles in sustaining all life on Earth, as well as the ways in which our economies are interfering with ecosystem function with reference to planetary boundaries and tipping points. So these are all very exciting additions to an economics curriculum, which up until now really does not address any kind of knowledge of ecosystems, which is bizarre because we're totally dependent on ecosystems for our entire economic lives. Coming to the end now, just very quickly, I want to try to get you excited about the possibilities here, because what happens in England right now, if economics is opened up for review, can join in with some other things that are happening in other parts of the world to set off some global tipping points for the way economics is taught. So right now, the Netherlands and the International Baccalaureate have opened up economics for review. They're in the process of reviewing the discipline right now. If England does it, that means we've got a third major educational institution opening up economics for review. England also has an impact on Cambridge International Education with its 10,000 schools worldwide. So we're talking about really a kind of almost mini super cycle of curriculum revision that's going on globally. We have this unique opportunity that is not going to come around again for a very long time to shift these institutions and make a change globally that not only could impact secondary school systems around the world, but also have wider social implications for social norms as well as for teaching at university level. So really, I'm just imploring everybody who's on this call to really get involved and take this seriously. We might not be able to directly impact climate change right now. We might not be able to get amazing leaders in office who are really going to take the steps that we need. But this is something we can affect and has enormous potential for shifting education globally and social systems globally. So I hope that everyone on this call and everybody who looks at this presentation then later is willing to step up and participate. It's very, very important. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. Tilly is going to talk to us a little bit more about the recently launched Youth Shadow Panel, which is going to mimic the Francis Review and give students an opportunity to feedback about the entire national curriculum. But if you're an economics teacher, you can also help students feedback specifically about economics, maybe referencing some of the things that I've talked about. We're also going to put out and launch some talking points that students can use to help frame their feedback. And likewise, if you'd like to engage, there is a project, regenerativeeconomics.earth, where we're working on globally shifting secondary economics education. There's a book, we're even writing a book so that the whole process of moving to this new way of thinking isn't scary. You can actually see what it entails and how exciting it is. So we're writing a book that's going online. It's open access, free for anybody to use and adapt in the Creative Commons. If you get on our mailing list, you can access the textbook. You can set up a call with me. I'm happy to talk to you about how you can integrate it. Or you can even request a mapping of your specification that you're using so you can find the footholds. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Sonal Patel, who is a teacher of A-level economics, and she's going to talk to you more specifically about how you can get this work into your teaching. Has Sonal joined?
I have. Can you see me?
Amazing. Super.
Okay, so firstly, I'm signing on through my mobile phone at the moment. I'd like to say, just to draw on a few things that Jennifer's mentioned, I've been teaching economics for 12 years, and probably the main frustration is the idea that our living world, humans, complex webs of life are entirely reduced to factors of production within quantitative models. And in this kind of study, ecologically destructive outcomes are inevitable. So I've always tried to get students to think critically about what they're learning, understanding this idea of embeddedness, but I never had a formal way to do that. So I'm really excited about regenerative economics, particularly the embedded model. The regenerative economics online course book, the textbook, I've started to use it, and it's been great in that in the way that it's organized. And there is the curriculum plan that Jennifer mentioned. So as I'm going through my A-level Edexcel specification, I can draw on the curriculum plan. And as you can see on the left-hand side are the units and subunits. And on the right-hand side are the footholds that link to regenerative economics. So on this question of a model that is more reflective of human nature, the natural world, an embedded model, we can go to section of the textbook 1.21. And in that section of the textbook, there's some activities at the end. So it introduces the embedded model. So we look at the economy of the model within a social foundation with ecological ceilings. So it's about living well within planetary boundaries. So a really nice activity that we could do is option 2. So we've got comparing the circular flow and the embedded economy diagrams. So this gets students thinking critically about what they're learning. They explicitly learn about the circular economy in theme 2 on the macroeconomic side of the course. And then what they can see is, if they analyze the circular flow, is very much inputs and outputs. So ultimately reduced to how much GDP, how much stuff we can make. And of course, the embedded model, the boundary of provisioning systems, as Jennifer's talked about, increases to include energy and natural resources. So this is a nice exercise to get them to think about, what is the purpose of each of these models? What do they show? And then they're going to be able to find the differences between them. So that's a nice thing to do. How can we actually do this in our course? I've tended to actually set homeworks on extended material on regenerative economics, but I'd say there's a various different things we can do. So the footholds in the curriculum, we can set extensions of curricula. So one thing that's a big emphasis in schools, as all the teachers know that have signed in today, is supracurricular economics. So regenerative economics is a great way to extend the existing mandatory curriculum. And I'm finding the curriculum plan quite useful for doing that. And the links that go to the relevant parts of the textbook has been really useful. So extension work, an example of what I did was we study national income statistics in theme 2.1. So we look at how GDP is a metric of well-being. We also look at its limitations explicitly in the syllabus. But we don't really do that in a comprehensive way. So an extension task I asked my students to do was think about the limitations of GDP through different lenses. It could be ecological, socioeconomic, cultural, feminist, and they have to do their research. So that was one way to extend what we're already learning. The other thing we're doing is a really great way to actually get really deep into regenerative economics is through an extended project qualification. So many A-level students will do the EPQ. The EdExcel criteria is that it's a 5,000 word project. So they can really get into quite a bit of depth about something they feel quite interested in. So I've got a student at the moment. It's a bit of a wordy title that we need to work on, but I'll read it out nevertheless. The title she's come up with is, to what extent is post-growth economics in global North countries necessary to regulate stability and resilience of Earth systems within the planetary boundary framework? She's also a geography student, so this is a very interdisciplinary EPQ title. And I think, as Jennifer drew on earlier, it's really important that we understand economics embedded in different disciplines. So that overlap with geography just makes it interesting. To draw on that, after school clubs is a really good way as well to engage in project-based learning. And I would say, for want of a better phrase, to kill two birds with one stone is to actually team up with geography, perhaps when they go on a field trip. So they may be collecting soil samples and water samples for rivers near an industrial site. So then making the connection that actually this is more than just an externality of the market. It's a necessary outcome of markets for as long as market systems ignore the role of the natural world as a provisioning system. So just to summarize then, footholds in the curriculum, really good things to do are extended supracurricular tasks as homework. The extended project qualification is a great opportunity. It gives them accountability. It's self-directed learning. They choose their topic. The only criteria is that it is not part of the specification, which is great because they can go outside of the specification. Regenerative economics is a very natural extension of much of the curricula that we learn. So extension work, extended project, and experiential learning, perhaps through work that they might do in politics or geography field trips, carrying out primary research. And I think that relates to what Jennifer was saying about getting outside the classroom and seeing the interdependencies in the world between us, so non-human nature and human nature, and getting rid of this dichotomy and getting students to think that way. I just want to say there's a couple of other things that I just wanted to draw on. There's some things that I really liked in the textbook that I thought that it might be worth showing some examples of. One of the frustrations in the syllabus that I found was we touch on behavioral economics, and it's 1.2 in the EdExcel specification. So, and it's called Alternative Views of Consumer Behavior. So in this, any activity or actions by economic agents that are not based in self-interest are regarded as non-rational. So thinking in families, thinking in communities is considered non-rational. And this just isn't how the natural world works. So as we've talked about today, there are so many examples throughout nature of reciprocity, social capital, and the fact that this is required for survival. There's actually a really lovely example in the textbook, and it is, so it's the concept of mutualism, and that is section 1.3. And so just to give you this example, and it really just gets students thinking in pictures. So ants actually protect fungi from pests. So they perform that task. They also help with nutrition. And in return, there's this symbiotic relationship where fungus actually feeds the ant colony. So you see this throughout nature. There's an incredible book that was written in the 60s by Lynn Margulis, and it's one of my favorites. And, you know, it kind of debunked a lot of neo-Darwinian theory, that we do collaborate to survive and to thrive. And you know, from a personal point of view, I think it's about time that our curriculum started to reflect the nature of reality, and not reduce everything we learn to measurables and quantitative models. So, I mean, it's the first time that I've been able to get something, a resource that is comprehensive, that links to the curriculum. And, you know, I do feel a bit more optimistic about things, a little bit less frustrated. And yeah, I think it's time for change. And so it's great that we've got students driving this. There's just a couple of other areas that I thought were really interesting. So we study GDP, GNI, national income. And if we see in the curriculum map, we've got 1.12, the embedded economy model, which I think Jennifer has shown you about. And I like this task. And this was option 2 of the activities in the embedded model. So instead of comparing GDP as a metric for well-being, looking at a more holistic measure is, of course, the donut, which incorporates social foundation and ecological ceiling. So the University of Leeds has done a great piece of research that is mentioned in the textbook. It analyzes 150 countries across, based on the donut. So how well are they living well within planetary boundaries? An interesting finding was that no one country is actually meeting basic needs within planetary boundaries. And I think that's got a lot to do with the way we measure it and what we're teaching in the classroom. It starts in the classroom. These are the future policy makers. And I think it's important that that we're using the donut. So the task itself is take about 10 to 15 minutes for the students to explore the data, and they can find ways to actually compare and contrast different countries. And this is quite good if it's something they have a strong personal connection to. So for me, it would be India. How does India perform? I know they've got their own donut lab in Delhi and Mumbai. How do they perform against other countries that might be emerging economies? So that's a really nice one to do, and it's evidence-based and it's independent study. So lots of good stuff to connect to in the textbook. The curriculum plan, the curriculum map is very useful. So just to encourage, sometimes we feel a bit frustrated. There's so much to get through in the A-level specification. I'm teaching right up until the exams most of the time, but a way to do it is really through that independent study work that we set, projects, after school clubs, and the extended project qualification is a really good thing to do. And just work collaboratively with other departments. I think that can work well. So I think that's about it. I will say there was something in the comments, and I think it was Susan James, something about how regenerative economics can link across the curriculum. And I think that's why it's a really good opportunity to work with other departments, politics, geography, history, to learn in a more interdisciplinary way.
Wonderful.
And that's it from me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sonal. And I'm very impressed that you actually managed to come in between your multiple commitments at school today. I know you've got to head off in a couple of minutes, but I was just wondering if you could just answer one of the other questions that's come through very quickly.
Sure.
So again, from Sue James, do students find it difficult to have to follow the present curriculum and then the extension tasks? And does the second contradict the first?
So that's an interesting point. So one way to try and sort of make this more legitimate in the eyes of the students, they don't often want to feel like they're doing extra work that isn't going to be on the exam, is through the fact that they are required to think critically about what they're learning. So they should be given credit for evaluating theory or ideas or models, as long as it's based in either evidence or based in economic theory. It doesn't have to be the models that we're teaching. So yes, it can be challenging. Students sometimes question it, but I think they have, I believe, time outside of the curriculum independently to work on projects. It might just even be 2 projects a year, or just short bursts of research. I think that break up a lesson nicely. So if we've done like a double lesson and we're looking at GDP, right, 10 minutes, laptops, what are the issues with GDP? Let's look at some countries where we've got, let's say, high inequality and high GDP at the same time, or, you know, the measures on ecological outcomes and HDI, Human Development Indicator. How does that compare to GDP? So just kind of finding ways within the learning to just short bursts of perhaps research and tasks. It is challenging though. It's a fair question, and this is why we need to actually change the curriculum, so that it's not something we're trying to just shoehorn in. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much as well for being here today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's really, really great, of course, to hear how you're putting this into practice and the huge impact that this work has actually can potentially have. So now I'm going to move over to Matilda Upton-Hansel. So Matilda is a volunteer for Teach the Future, who's recently been involved in much of the campaign's work. And yeah, pass over to Matilda.
Sorry, Jennifer, could you please stop sharing your screen and I'll start sharing the slides.
I'll start
Thank you.
so I'll introduce myself. I am Matilda Ortilli Hansel Upton, and I'm a volunteer with Teach the Future. Recently we went, well, not that recently, it's gone fast. It was the start of October. I went along with them to Parliament, and we hosted a parliamentary reception alongside Fund the Future, Net Zero, and SOS UK.
Illy, we've lost your sound, I think. I don't know if you can hear us, but maybe turn your camera off.
On students and also just the world. So yeah.
Sorry, we just lost you for a second there. You've just come back. So we only really heard about the Parliament event and then you broke out. So maybe if you turn your camera off and just repeat what you said, please.
Do you want me to turn it
help
off?
the signal a bit, yeah.
Okay. So yes, I went to Parliament alongside SOS UK, Net Zero and Fund the Future. Went for a parliamentary reception for the decarbonising schools, hosted by Nadia Whittam. It was amazing, really successful. But what I was saying before is more importantly, I'm an economics student at A-level, and I have experienced a lot of this firsthand. And I think I'm reading through the track changes. I'm really excited and quite optimistic about it for both students of economics, but also just the entire world. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So first we've got relevance to issues. Climate change is our generation's challenge, and economics plays a key role in addressing it. Curriculum update help us to understand sustainability, but practical solution-focused examples still need to be added. Then we've got my personal experience. I'm personally quite lucky, as my economics teacher puts a lot of emphasis on the environment, which isn't really written in as a requirement, but he's really quite passionate and really interested in it. So I'm really thankful for that. But I know that it's not, when he's going through the slides that have been created by other teachers, I can't see a lot of the environment impact, environment just in general on it. And it's just him adding it in because he wants to and he feels it's important. And I think every student deserves that. Adding to that, I've learned about carbon markets, green investments, and circular economies so far in economics. However, more practical solution-based approaches and real-life strategies are much needed. Then there's sort of empowerment of action and sort of giving us as students drive. So we could have student-led initiatives, inspired action, and allows for more active participation. Then projects, for example, simulations and debates, make learning more engaging and relevant for young people, and more opportunities for student leadership and collaboration would also amplify impact. Then we have impact on well-being. I think well-being is really important and usually cast aside when the environment conversation comes about, because people don't really associate the two largely, because they're two very different topics when you look at them separately. But when you put them together realistically, I know me personally, when I first sort of came across the environment and climate change, it freaked me out, like proper freaked me out. I was just like, well, we're just going to die, aren't we? And then it took me having to like look into it and do the research myself to realize, you know what, we can actually do something about this, but we're really not doing enough. So I think there's a fine line between being absolutely perpetually freaked out and actually using that to drive you to actually do something about it. I think learning solutions reduces eco-anxiety and builds optimism. Then positive examples show human ingenuity and inspires hope. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. My personal recommendations, I'm going to build on what I've said. So I think we need more real-world examples. So this could be case studies of young entrepreneurs and communities tracking climate issues. Then to increase interdisciplinarity. This may link economics with geography, politics, and environmental science, for example. And we could amplify student leadership by creating opportunities for student-led projects and curriculum input. Then we have the call to action. I think we need our teachers to equip us with tools, knowledge, and actionable skills to be able to build a sustainable future and foster collaboration and innovation to address the world's most pressing challenges of our dying planet. Then what currently works? In my opinion, what I think currently works in the economics curriculum. Real-world connections link economics to sustainability, for example, carbon markets and green investment. It also engages critical thinking, so debates and case studies like previously mentioned. For example, we could do it on, I don't know, energy markets. And then finally, it gives a solid foundation with topics like externalities and market failures are relevant and very impactful when it comes to the merging of economics and the environment. However, it's not all positive. It falls short in many aspects. It can sometimes be too theoretical, as it lacks hands-on real-life applications, and it's too much in class. I feel like a lot of people's realization of we really need to do something is when they're out and about and they see these things firsthand. And I think that is what we're lacking largely, especially in economics, because it is like we're being told all these things, but we've never seen it. Just with anything. And I think it can get really repetitive and boring in the classroom setting. And we were able to go out and do and see these things we learn about happen in front of us, I think it would be really beneficial to our education. Then there is also limited scope. Sustainability isn't fully integrated into core topics like trade or development, which it easily could be, and need for actionable skills, as there are few opportunities for entrepreneurial or community-based solutions. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Alongside the track changes documents, Teach the Future has been really busy recently putting together a shadow curriculum and assessment review, and working alongside other leading youth organisations to ensure youth perspectives are properly integrated into the official curriculum and assessment review. Like the official review, ours has a call for evidence and a roadshow, and we will create an interim and final report. We have launched a shadow call for evidence and are keen to get as many responses as possible. The deadline is the 12th of January. We're asking to hear from other young people about their experience at school or college and have a few straightforward questions to answer, which can be done as a group or via lesson plans. So we're keen for teachers to help us do this too. They can get creative with pictures, videos, or arts to really engage. Our shadow panel will have an audience with Becky Francis and various other members of the panel this week, in a week's time, and we will present our own experiences and early findings. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tilly. That's brilliant. It's really great to hear your perspective and, of course, all the exciting work going on at Teach the Future at the moment. So we've come to the end of the time. I can see that in the questions, we've had some really exciting and interesting ones in there. They have been answered live. Sorry, not live, not slide. They have been answered within the chat function. So if you want to have a look at the Q&A, you'll be able to see the questions and also those answered ones. I think it's okay to run over just like a couple of seconds. Just wondering if we can just very quickly answer. What's the easiest way to share this with economics teachers and students in a way that enthuses them? And have you got any ready-made blurb? And I don't know, Jennifer, if that kind of links to the documents that you're bringing together to kind of influence the open call for evidence as well for the youth panel.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll just encourage you to have a look at the Regenerative Economics website because we have so much material there. There are introductory videos about it. We are posting more and more information. We're writing a book to go with it as well. It's not finished. We've done 3 of the 7 topics. I'm hopefully publishing a 4th one on the Commons tomorrow. And it should be done, the whole thing should be done by June, but there's just a wealth of information there for you to pick up and use. But if you would like to talk to me about your specific context and what might be possible, then you can also get in touch with me. My contact information is on the website, and I'm happy to have a call with you about that as well. And then I would just encourage you to get students to feedback into the Youth Shadow Panel, which will then impact the Francis Review. They need enough evidence to open up economics. We really want to make it clear to them that we can't take the current syllabus any longer as it is, that it's actually really a matter of urgency to change what we're doing with this course. So yeah, lots of opportunities there.
Thanks so much. And thanks for everybody's questions in there. Yeah, you can find Teach the Future's contact details on the next slide, if that goes on. So please feel free to email directly or contact via social media. The track changes A-level documents are now available on the website, so you'll be able to have a look over these, and we'll be sharing the additional support as mentioned by Jennifer as well, and others. So please do share these with your colleagues and your contacts if you can. And thank you to all of the many people who have supported this work with your time and expertise. It's been absolutely brilliant to hear from everyone today, working really hard behind the scenes in order to be able to bring this together, including hearing, of course, from yourself, Tilly, on the huge amount of work being done to continue this critical work. And thank you so much. Do get in touch. Any unanswered questions or anything, we're more than happy to continue the conversation. And thank you for joining us. Thank you.